In the Vedic tradition, meditation is fundamentally a form of service. Although we meditate to attain a higher level of spiritual development for ourselves, that we can't deny that that's part of the motive for our meditation. We want to change. We want to become more in touch with our soul. But the fundamental motive for a meditative practice is not one's own spiritual development or one's spiritual evolution, according to this tradition. The fundamental reason for meditating is to align yourself within this divine evolutionary flow, this divine current of energy that's pouring in, and in effect, release the energy through our centers, through our body, through our subtle bodies, as a form of service. It is a form, the highest form of service really that we can offer is to align ourselves with spiritual energy, contact it, hold it, which is part of the meditative practice, is to hold. That's why the cup is a symbol, very important symbol in meditation. The holding of the energy, and then the distribution of the energy. So it's a contact, a holding, and a distribution of spiritual energy in the service of the plan, in the service of the planet. So I've come to think of meditation as a type of green spirituality. You know, we hear a lot about the movement towards climate change. Many people today are concerned with the earth. Well, I think the spiritual seekers of the world are fundamentally on the forefront of the movement for climate change. That doesn't mean that we're all environmentalists, but we're spiritual environmentalists. Because we're working to solve the problems as they exist on a subtle level. Because the problems of pollution extend beyond the physical plane. We're told that if we could see our planet, and some of us can, if we could see with the inner sight, we would see that our planet is surrounded not only by fogs and mists of physical pollution, but fogs and mist of astral pollution. Fogs and mists that exist also on the mental plane. And we're told that these fogs, these mists, this pollution is more powerful and more detrimental to our health than the physical pollution on the planet. And just as we have all of the tools in our power as a planet to solve the problems of climate change on the physical plane, so too do we as spiritual seekers have all the tools available to us to solve this other more subtle problem of glamour and separatism that have created the fogs and mists on the astral and mental plane. So we have a real opportunity, if we take our spiritual work seriously, to become green spiritual seekers and to help heal this planet. Because as we know, this planet is in great need of healing. And so it makes sense to me, and it gives me a purpose in life to be part of a vast movement of seekers who are, in effect, I believe, their life intention is to help heal planet Earth, to help clean away the negative energies on the planet through their application to daily spiritual practices. So when we come to an actual consideration of meditation, it's often compared to a lotus flower. And I think sometimes having visual images in our minds says a lot more than words. So if you can remember that the path of meditation is really like a lotus flower, perhaps it would help you in your work. I once asked a great teacher that I knew to describe meditation to me, because I was wanting to understand more about it. And she described it solely in terms of lotus flowers, the visualization of lotus flowers. And I've always remembered that. Because if we think of the chakra system, it really is composed of lotus flowers. And so if we visualize the lotus in the heart center, lifting up to the lotus in the head center, and then eventually lifting up to the soul, which we're told is a golden lotus. We see the beauty and the simplicity behind a technique of meditation that uses a visual image, such as the lotus. In India, they spoke of the lotus because it has its roots in the dirt, in the mud. Just like we have our roots on the physical plane. We're of the earth. But then it pushes itself up a long distance through the water. It's a symbol of the path itself. We're born of the earth, but then we have to push ourselves up through the water, through the emotional life, which is a long struggle. If you look at the length of the distance that the lotus pushes up through the water, it's the longest part of the journey for the lotus. And so too is it the longest part of the journey for each one of us. The struggle with the emotional body is the hardest part of the path. But the lotus persists and struggles up and faintly sees the light shining through the water. Just as we can faintly see the soul, there are glimpses of the soul that enter into our consciousness before we actually become illumined. We all know that. We all have moments of inspiration. But then the lotus pierces through the water and is into the light, but the bud is still closed. But under the impress of the sun, slowly over time, the lotus begins to open. And so that opening, that impact of the sun, is really what the meditative practice is all about. It's bringing the sun, or the soul, to bear on the buds. And you and I, we're all described as the lotus buds. We're not in full flower, we're buds. And then, as the lotus opens, the perfume is emitted. The ultimate gift is the perfume, which is symbolic of our service. Our service should be, as a friend of mine says, like the perfume of the rose. It's not flashy. It's not out there bombastically proclaiming itself. It's like the perfume of the rose. Very beautiful, very subtle. And you don't really always know where it comes from. That's true service. And that's what spiritual service is. You know, we learn to work behind the scenes. We learn to work beneath the surface of events. And we learn to read beneath the surface of events. You know. Christ also said, consider the lilies of the field. Why is that? You know? Because these are symbols. He asked us to be like the lilies of the field. Flowering, giving off our perfume and our beauty unobtrusively.